Hello and welcome. Tonight, bombshell as Federal High Court Abuja sacks Ebonyi Governor, his deputy and 17 lawmakers for defecting to the APC. Governor Umahi says court lacks powers to remove him. The Senate challenges ruling on Electoral Act amendment, barring it from re-amending the law. President of Senate maintains judiciary cannot stop the National Assembly. Former Senator Ademola Adeleke wins the governorship primary of the People's Democratic Party in Osun State. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vows to fight to the end, addresses UK MPs virtually, becomes the first foreign leader to do so. Plus more from our London studio and around the world in 5.
On business news tonight, Nigeria Customs Service suspends implementation of recently introduced electronic valuation system for imported vehicles for 30 days.
On sports news tonight, the Premier League suspends its broadcast of matches in Russia with immediate effect following the country's invasion of neighboring Ukraine.
And from the nation's capital, it's International Women's Day. As women groups demand gender equality, pressure the House of Representatives to rescind decision on 3 gender-based bills.
Not many saw it coming, but what some might have thought to be a dream turned out to be reality, as the Federal High Court Abuja today ordered the Ebonyi State Governor and his deputy to vacate their seats. The court's verdict was based on the grounds that the People's Democratic Party won the March 2019 governorship election and not its candidate, and having defected to the All Progressives Congress, Governor Umahi and his deputy Eric Igwe cannot transfer the mandate of the PDP to the APC. Citing Section 221 of the Constitution, Justice Inyang Ekwo ordered the PDP to immediately send names of replacements to the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to conduct fresh elections.
The atmosphere in the courtroom did nothing to suggest the outcome of the suit filed by the People's Democratic Party against Governor Dave Umahi over his defection to the All Progressives Congress. Lawyers of the parties involved in the case, as well as supporters of the governor, were present in court. Delivering judgments, the presiding judge, Justice Inyang Ekwo, explains that the defection of the governor and his deputy is illegal and unconstitutional. The judge held that the votes that brought them to office belonged to the PDP and not transferable to the APC. In a separate judgment, the judge also ordered the Speaker of the Ebonyi State House of Assembly and 17 other lawmakers to vacate their seats in the state's legislature. The governor's team faults the judgment.
It's very, very unfortunate that this type of judgments can come up. The Supreme Court has ruled and said there is no provision against the defection of the president, vice president, governor, or deputy governor. So, is the court making a judgment different from that of the Supreme Court? It is obvious. All the issues we raised were carpeted.
This is a clear case of travesty of justice. Jurisdiction. The State High Court had made a pronouncement on this matter, saying that the Constitution has no provision for defection or has not made it an offense for a governor to defect from a party to the other. And I'm surprised that the Federal High Court here did not cite any provision of the Constitution.
But the PDP council insists that the judgment was on course.
Well, this is a very epochal judgment. It has settled an issue that has been thorny in Nigeria's constitutional law over the years. So many people believe that when a governor defects, that there is no constitutional effect. But this judgment has been able to show that, in fact, it has the same consequences as a member of the House of Assembly defecting, especially in view of the judgment which was relied on, that the judgment of the Supreme Court in Wada and Bello, Faleke, and the INEC, we show that votes belong to political party and not to the candidates. Now with that, nobody who defects to a minority party can expect to remain in office. I think this judgment has gone far to settle it.
The governor is hoping to upturn the judgment as he heads to the Court of Appeal to appeal the judgment.
Meanwhile, Governor Umahi has been reacting to the court judgment sacking him and his deputy from the seat of power in Ebonyi State. According to him, Justice Ekwo lacks the powers to remove him from office and has put the judiciary on trial by that judgment.
I've listened to the judgment of Ekwo, and it's very obvious that he was on a mission. He was making all efforts to upturn the rulings of the Supreme Court and appeal courts on issues like this. We have had the rumors before now that he was determined to give judgment against all known laws and the Constitution, first to embarrass APC, two, to embarrass the federal government. For me, I do not feel worried, but I feel so sorry for the judiciary. The executives may have problems, the legislature may have problems, but the moment justice could be purchased, then we are in trouble in this country. And the ruling this afternoon is a clear evidence that this country is in trouble. And let me tell you that this same judge has over 10 cases against Ebonyi State government with him. And you can imagine what is going to rule. We have petitioned him to NJC, and we will follow it up at all costs to ensure that this man is brought to justice. I want you to disregard the judgment. It is null and void. There is a substituting judgment in Zamfara State, and there is also a judgment in Ebonyi State. So we've chosen the one to obey. We will not obey his ruling. We will obey the ruling of a competent court of equal level that says you cannot sue a governor.
Well, staying with his replacement, the PDP appears set to occupy the Ebonyi government house as it has nominated Mr. Iduma Igariwe and Mr. Fred Udogu as replacements for Governor Umahi and his deputy following the court judgment. Addressing journalists at the PDP headquarters in Abuja, the national chairman of the party, Senator Iyorchia Ayu, also requests INEC to immediately issue certificate of return to their candidates as directed by the court.
PDP is immediately submitting to INEC the names of our candidates for governor and deputy governor of Ebonyi State, respectively. For governor, Honorable Iduma Igariwe, and for position of deputy governor, the party is putting forward Mr. Fred Udogu. And in line with the court order, we are also calling on INEC to immediately issue the certificates of return to the PDP nominees as replacement for Mrs. Umahi and Igwe, pursuant to the order of the Honorable Court. We call on the Chief Judge of Ebonyi State to immediately swear them in as soon as INEC issues the requisite certificates of return. And lastly, we call on INEC to immediately withdraw the certificates of return from the 17 lawmakers and commence the process of conducting by-elections to replace them.
We'll have more on the Federal High Court judgment on that replacement in the course of the bulletin. Moving on to other stories, staying with politics, former Senator Ademola Adeleke has emerged winner in the Osun State People's Democratic Party governorship primary, beating 5 other contestants in the election. Some of the aspirants were yesterday reported to have withdrawn from the exercise, but the committee in charge of the election said it was not notified of the decision. However, a parallel governorship primary held by a faction of the party also in Osogbo, the state capital, produced Dotun Babayemi as the winner. But in announcing the winner, the chairman of the election committee and deputy governor of Bayelsa State declared the parallel primary invalid.
I am here as the deputy governor of Bayelsa State and the chief returning officer for this election. And so, the palace is here, and the crown is here, and so the king is here. And so it is from here, the official results have been announced. Anybody who is doing any primary anywhere, that is invalid, not recognized by the national. It is better to gather than to scatter. And so I encourage everybody to come together. It's on that note, I want to congratulate candidates and the governor-elect. Our candidates.
Meanwhile, the elated winner of the Osun governorship primary is calling for his fellow contestants to join hands with him and work towards winning the July 16th election.
I thank my co-contestant for their sportsmanship and urge them to allow us to work together as one big family. No victor, no vanquished. We are all winners. Let's clap for PDP. Let's work together to rescue the good people of Osun State from the current APC government misrule. The good people of Osun State have suffered enough. I call on everybody to join hands together with the good people of Osun State. And by the grace of God, PDP will win on the 16th of July 2022 by landslide and regain our stolen mandate.
Well, staying with political matters, the acting chairman of the Caretaker Extraordinary Convention Planning Committee of the APC and Governor of Niger State, Abubakar Sani Bello, says the committee has adopted the report of the zoning committee of the APC led by the governor of Kwara State. Addressing journalists at the party secretariat in Abuja after a meeting of the committee, he says the report will be released to the public soon and that the party is set to hold its next meeting next week. When asked about the purported resignation of the secretary of the committee, Senator Akpanu Edehe, Mr. Sani Bello declined comment.
It's a continuation of yesterday's meeting, and just so that you don't ask me tomorrow, we're going to meet every day at the convention so that we put things together. And basically today, we looked at the convention subcommittee, and we collected some reports from some of the committees, hoping that tomorrow we'll decide on next steps to take.
One of the major
Nothing much happened today.
One of the major things that will affect this convention, sir, is the zoning. And yesterday the committee submitted this report. Have you been able to discuss on this?
The report has been adopted, so it will be released to you any moment now. The zoning formula. Yeah, it will be released. Just wait, they will release it to you.
And how soon do you expect the next meeting? Because one of the reasons...
Hopefully next week. Yeah. In fact, next week.
In part two, after the break, the Senate to continue Electoral Act amendment. This is despite court ruling barring the upper house from doing so. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Federal High Court Abuja sacks Ebonyi Governor, his deputy and 17 lawmakers for defecting to the APC. Governor Umahi says court lacks the powers to remove him. Senate challenges ruling on Electoral Act amendment, barring it from re-amending the law. President of Senate maintains judiciary cannot stop the National Assembly. Former Senator Ademola Adeleke wins Osun State PDP governorship primary. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vows to fight to the end, addresses UK MPs virtually. The Senate has moved to amend the 2022 Electoral Act, disregarding a federal high court order restraining the National Assembly from tampering with the newly amended act. During plenary on Tuesday, Senate President Ahmed Lawan says the Constitution stipulates separation of powers and the judiciary cannot stop another arm of government in performing its roles in a democracy. Mr. Lawan said this during the first reading of the amendment of the Electoral Act during the legislative proceedings. The letter was also read on the floor of the House of Representatives by the Speaker today.
I find it very, very necessary to talk to this at this point because the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, our governance system, is based on the presidential system of government, where there's clear-cut separation of powers. And I mean separation and exercise of powers. The judiciary, under no circumstance, can stop the legislature, the National Assembly, from performing its legislative duties. We know what our due processes are. So, just like we wouldn't venture into what the judiciary does, the judiciary should understand that we have our processes. If the president rises to the National Assembly to request for an amendment, that is within his competence. And it is for the National Assembly to decide whether it agrees with the request of Mr. President or not.
And we're off to our Abuja studios where Terry Kumi has some more stories. Hello, Terry, and happy International Women's Day.
Hello, Millicent. I was hoping to say that to you first. And as a he for she, I'm quite excited about the string of stories I'm about to bring to you. Let's begin with International Women's Day. And for Nigerian women, it's an opportunity to make their voices heard, especially their opposition to the decision of federal lawmakers rejecting the gender-based bills in the Constitution Amendment. The women group staged a protest at the National Assembly asking lawmakers to rescind their decision or risk being voted out of their seats in the 2023 general elections. Our correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
The barricaded roads into the National Assembly signify the fourth day of protesting the bills dropped by the National Assembly that protect the rights of Nigerian women. The protesters are using the occasion of the International Women's Day to restate their insistence that the National Assembly revisit those bills. They want the lawmakers to rescind their decision to deny Nigerian women their request for 111 special seats for women, indigenship status, citizenship status, 35% representation in party leadership, and more appointive positions in government.
They must revisit that decision. They must reverse that decision. If not be so, 2023 we go show them pepper. Anyhow, woman be vote am. Women vote women. Do not vote for any man.
The protesters have a slew of support from men who say they stand with women in this decision.
They are trying to deceive you. They are trying to deceive Nigerians that there will be a second phase. The 2023 elections is just months away. Let them do it now.
The protesters also have the support of the European Union in Nigeria and the National Human Rights Commission. They state that women's rights are human rights and insist on the equality of the sexes.
We will stand together with the women in Nigeria because women's rights are human rights, and women have the right to be treated as any other human being as the man. So that's the basic message.
Women should be equal stakeholders in decision-making places, and that is what Nigeria needs to get to the next level.
We shall always fight for our rights.
Breaking the gender barrier is the theme for this year's International Women's Day, and as Nigerian women join their counterparts around the world to celebrate, the demands of these women at the gates of the National Assembly are clear. They want to be addressed by the leadership of the National Assembly, and they're insisting that the National Assembly rescind its decision to drop those bills that were favorable to women. Whether that is going to happen is yet to be known, and women tell us that they are aware that a whole constitutional review will take some time, but as long as there's any hope that can be done, they're insisting that has to be done for them to see any justice meted out to Nigerian women, or they say they will mobilize at the local levels. From the gates of the National Assembly in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, in what appears as a response to the protest by the women, lawmakers in the House of Representatives today made a U-turn and rescinded their decisions on 3 gender-based bills in the constitution amendments process. This is coming a week after legislators voted against the bills, which are now to be recommitted for consideration and will be part of the second batch of constitution amendments to be presented in the coming weeks. Plenary commences in the Green Chamber, and lawmakers immediately go into an executive session.
Executive session.
When the doors are opened, it is clear that an important conversation has just been had.
Last week, the House voted on the constitutional amendment, and there are issues arising therefrom, and the House, in its wisdom, has decided to take a course of action for the good of the country.
Following public outcry and constant protests by women and civil society organizations over the 5 women bills which were rejected by the National Assembly, the Speaker announces that 3 of the bills are to be recommitted and reconsidered.
After the rescission, release them on the next set of amendments coming up, I believe, Deputy Speaker, in the next 4 weeks. The Constitution, I believe under Section 5, allows the House to regulate its own procedure, and we will be relying on the provision of the Constitution to harmonize the differences between us and the Senate.
Both chambers had voted against constitution bills to provide for 35% affirmative action for women in political party administration, special seats for women in national and state houses of assembly, allow women take up indigenship of their husband's state after 5 years, as well as to allow foreign women take up citizenship of their Nigerian husbands. Reacting to the U-turn by the House, the highest-ranking woman in the House of Representatives is hopeful that the leadership of the House would lobby the Senate to follow suit.
The leadership, like the presiding officer, should talk with the Senate, because they have to meet. Of course, the Speaker has to speak with the Senate President, because this is the right thing to do. It's not about anybody. It's about our nation. It's about the ridiculous nature of failure of those bills to pass.
She explains why the bill on special seats was not recommitted.
They believe that INEC had concluded all the processes and procurement for 2023 general elections.
The bill to provide for a minimum of 35% for women in ministerial and commissioner nominees was, however, not mentioned. The bill was among the 5 women bills which failed last week when it was not passed by the Senate, although the House had passed it at 20%. Now, with the lawmakers bowing to the pressure mounted by the women, The Minister of Women Affairs and Social Development, Mrs. Pauline Talon, is calling on women to see themselves as solutions to the nation's myriad of challenges. Speaking at an event organized to commemorate this year's International Day for Women, Mrs. Talon condemns all forms of gender bias, which serves as an impediment in helping women bring their potential to the fore.
Once again, the Women's Anthem resonates as Nigeria marks the International Women's Day to commemorate the social, political, and economic achievements of women. Just as it's the case globally, women in Nigeria, irrespective of their social class, religion, or political leanings, gather to lend their voices on issues that affect women, and the latest being the gender bill, which was recently rejected by the National Assembly.
We must go back to the drawing board, we must re-strategize, and we must pick the pieces, because all is not yet over.
The theme for this year's celebration is Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. The theme remains significant, just as reactions trailed the rejection of some gender-related bills in the just concluded constitutional amendment at the National Assembly.
The bias that has existed against women for so long will not disappear by wishful thinking, by waving a magic wand, or by celebrating International Women's Day. It requires a change in attitude and a change in mindset.
At a separate event to commemorate the day, the women wing of the Christian Association of Nigeria also lent their voices to advocate for the equal rights of women in the society.
Women should be given the 35% we've been asking for the Beijing conference. The 35%, we are not saying it is not equal with 100%. In 100%, if you take 35%, it's just like maybe 1/3 of 100%. So if we are asking for 35%, it's not too much.
This year's campaign is represented by the Breaking the Bias hashtag and calls on people to work towards a world that is equitable and free from bias and discrimination. This is expected to help them achieve their dreams.
Meanwhile, the president has been extolling Nigerian women on the occasion of the International Women's Day. The celebration under the hashtag Break the Bias and the theme Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. President Muhammadu Buhari says it's an opportunity to reflect on the vital roles women play in society, homes, governance, the professions, and in all walks of life. He observes that women are not where they should be yet in different spheres of their endeavor, but believes that they can no longer be deprived for too long as they consistently prove that they can hold their own on all fronts and in all fields. President Buhari also applauds the contributions of women to the current administration in various capacities, noting that they are pulling their weight and making it impossible for anyone to downplay their essence. Now, one person that is noted for his support for women is Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, and the president is also celebrating him, albeit on the occasion of his 65th birthday. In a statement by his spokesperson, President Buhari says he joins millions of Nigerians, including family, friends, associates, to celebrate the man of many parts. He notes the worthy contributions of the Vice President to the development of the country as a lawyer, scholar, administrator, and pastor, working selflessly and sacrificially to bring government closer to the people and placing the people at the center of governance by regularly advocating policies that support human development. The statement reads in part, open quote, as a lawyer and scholar turns 65, the president affirms that his loyalty and dedication to duty have been most exemplary, especially in supervising the economy, which involves regular interface with heads of public and private institutions and other government structures to ensure synergy and harmony that puts the welfare and well-being of all Nigerians first. End of quote. The president also extols Vice President Osinbajo's courage, humility, and resourcefulness, praying that the Almighty God will continue to grant him the strength, wisdom, and good health to serve the nation and humanity. Well, that's all from the nation's capital. Back to you, Millicent, and once again, happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, Terry. I also wish you the same because you are a man supporting women. Well, let's go back to our top story, and that is the implications of today's court judgment removing the Ebonyi State Governor and his deputy from office. And we're now joined by the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Paul Nanaba. Thank you for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to this court judgment?
Well, the judiciary are not empowered to make laws. They interpret the laws. But in interpreting the laws, the judiciary has the power to expound the law. So the courts can expound the law but not expand the law. Those are the differences. Now, if you look at the Constitution, Section 68 1G of the Constitution makes it clear that members of the National Assembly or the State Assembly will lose their seats if they move from the party where they were elected to another party, except if there was a merger or there was factions and all that in the party. And in the case of Ifedayo Sunday, Apegunde, and Ondo State House Assembly, the Supreme Court stated that point clearly, that that will not be state crisis or faction. It must be something that is. And the Supreme Court followed its earlier decisions in Fedeco. You remember Fedeco in the 90s, and Mohammed Goni, Gongola State case. And then Attorney General of Federation and Abubakar. So the Supreme Court has been consistent on that point. So when I had a judgment, fine, that was clean judgment. It's expected, and it is effective primarily on the members of the House of Assembly. That is a sound judgment completely on the members of the House of Assembly, and I expect that. Yes, there's a right of appeal, but everyone knows that the court was right. You move from the party that elected you, you vacate your seat. And that rascality should be stopped, and that's what the church has just done. Now, with respect to the governor and the deputy, yes, the Constitution has stated the grounds for removal of the governor: death, incapacity, impeachment. Now, this is a novel situation. We've not had a court pronounce on the effect of cross-carpeting by a governor. Now, if you look at Abegunde's case, the Supreme Court said the reason behind that provision of the Constitution is to stem the tide of the fraudulent. The Supreme Court used the fraudulent move. The lead judgment, whatever, just that job. He said fraudulent movement. So when you look at what Justice Eko said today, he said, listen, who owns the vote? It wasn't Umahi that owned the vote. It is the party. So the votes were votes, Faleke and INEC and all that, were votes cast for PDP. So the Umahi and his deputy has no right to change the party that was voted for. So that is a serious point that we intend to see the Superior Courts. But if you ask me, I think the judge was right.
So while we wait, for the appeals, now the PDP has already named a replacement. Is that too soon? What do you see happening?
It's not too soon, because the judgment of a court becomes binding immediately. It's only in this part of the world that we toy with court judgments. Immediately the court handed that judgment, both of them were no longer governors. So 1 minute after, they were already in contempt if they had not left. That's it. So the judgment is it has immediate effect, and what was to happen was that the PDP should, in the next 1 hour or 2 hours, or in the next few minutes, submit. So it wasn't too soon. And once they have submitted, there were two options. You either submit or INEC, if you see there's a submission, you will accept. And that's it. You close the circle. If it is not, if there was no submission, and if INEC could also say, we're going to do fresh election there.
What about the appeal? Can the appeal stop?
There's a right of appeal and a filing application for state. We should not confuse this with pre-election matters or election matters where there's a time within which to appeal that has a form of automatic stay. There is no stay. Even an appeal does not operate as a stay. Rightly speaking, there's no stay presently. And then from that point, they submit the list. I think INEC should proceed with its statutory duties.
Finally, in perhaps a few seconds, Dave Umahi, Ebonyi State Governor, is saying that he's going to appeal to the NJC. What do you think will come out of that?
I'm not a member of the NJC. I think the judge had decided this case based on what is before him. He could be right or wrong. But looking at our jurisprudence, for the House of Assembly members, this is not the fault. The Supreme Court had led the precedent. For the governor and the deputy governor, like I said, it is novel, but it is a commendable decision, a bold step, expounding the law. Looking at precedents in Amici and INEC, Falek and INEC. You remember that when the candidate died in Kogi, the Supreme Court said, no, the vote belongs to the party. Now, why should we continue to look at the spate of movements causing confusion in this political space? It sends a proper warning. It shows the judiciary is still in the proper duty that the Constitution has assigned to them. And I'm sure that from tomorrow, you are not likely to hear what a friend calls jumpology, political jumpology. It will come to an end.
Well, we probably will see some fireworks with this judgment. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Paul Ananaba, for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you.
Well, more on International Women's Day. First Bank Nigeria Limited is giving the assurance that it will continue to take a pole position in the quest to ensure women are accorded equal treatment as their male counterparts in the workspace. The managing director of the bank, Adishola Adeduton, said this at an event in Lagos organized by the First Bank Women Network to mark the International Women's Day.
It's the First Bank Women's Network International Women's Day event, and guests meet, sip and paint.
We have now received our managing director. Please, a round of applause.
Even the managing director of the bank is not left out.
And we have our first set of painting here, indicating break the bias. Break the bias.
Before stepping out to other engagement for the day, he re-emphasizes the bank's commitment to promoting gender equality.
At First Bank and across all the jurisdictions where we operate, we would continue to create that enabling environment that allows our ladies to be the very best. We have already broken the bias as far as the bank is concerned, but we continue to do the right things that ensure that those gains, they become irreversible.
The theme for this year's event is Break the Bias, Imagine a Gender Equal World. And the Deputy Managing Director of the bank highlights areas First Bank has kept to its promises in this regard.
It would interest you to know that out of the $100 million finance facility received from the CDC group, a minimum of $30 million will be allocated in the form of credit lines to women entrepreneurs, which will help promote gender inclusion by improving lending and support to female entrepreneurs.
The purple-themed event gets even more colorful with exciting features and performances. Why the bias, the stereotypes? This set of panelists make insightful contributions.
I think it would be naive to say there isn't bias.
So you see bias in this form of prejudice, in form of stereotype.
You know, it exists, but the first thing is don't always have it in your head. And I think that is where sometimes you see things that may not even be a bias.
I've seen women who have told me that women are difficult. I can't work with her. So it's not a man thing. It's those natural things that God has given you to take care of, that he hasn't given us to do, that I think is the problem.
With the event over, First Bank reminds us all to play our part in ensuring the contribution of women to development is appropriately appreciated.
More company news. Against the backdrop of prevailing unemployment and underemployment in the country, Stanbic IBTC has held a youth leadership program at the Abbott College of Technology today in Lagos. It is the 5th annual event held by the bank with the focus on teaching students how to start and sustain a business.
Hundreds of students from Yaba College of Technology and its secondary school, as well as Queen's College, fill this hall. It's a hybrid event with some participants, including a chief executive, Stanbic IBTC Holdings PLC, joining virtually.
We should prioritize the harnessing of what I would call, the potential of Nigerian youth, while accelerating the economic, benefit.
A panel discussion centering on how to plan for an unconventional career follows right after the welcome address.
Start now from your savings and then start to build up into your investment. You want to be able to have some level of security when things happen that needs financial resources.
Guests on another panel give tips on how to start the race and remain relevant.
My parents gave me money to rent a house. I finished school, then I went to squat with a family member and used the 150,000 naira as seed funding.
You need to think about the problem you are solving in terms of the value. When you create value, then you get a lot of people running after you to give you money.
Pepper the Robot starts the fun, which ushers the guest artist Ladipo on stage.
There's no time, there's no energy. I'm just running.
I wish I had an opportunity like this when I was a student, because it would have exposed me a lot more to seeing people that had gone way ahead of me, to see that their stories are inspiring, to learn from them, to know that it is possible to create a plan.
We have a product called At Ease Wallets. And what it is they can school and still make a living. They can become agents for us, where people can come up to their phones and make calls, transfer money, buy airtime and stuff like that.
Staff of Stanbic IBTC say with engagements like this and the unique products of the bank, many youths are actualizing their dreams, and they don't expect this event to be an exception.
And let's bring you more business news. Here's Anne Waldo.
Thanks a lot, Millicent, and happy International Women's Day. Let's begin with Nigeria Customs Service suspending the implementation of the recently introduced electronic valuation system for imported vehicles for a 30-day period. The statement released by the NCS says the move is intended to allow the clearance of backlogs of vehicles trapped at the ports. The announcement is coming 2 weeks after the Clearing Agents Association at Lagos ports embarked on an indefinite strike over what they have described as frustrations caused by the implementation of the evaluation or vehicle identification number valuation VIN. Meanwhile, the Customs Service says that it has approved a one grace period with effect from today, March the 8th, to enable the clearing agents remove a backlog of vehicles at the port due to their strike action. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Ports Authority says that it is ready to test run the Lekki port by September this year. This was made known by the Managing Director of the NPA, Mohammed Bello Koko, when he paid a courtesy visit to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu at the Lagos House in Marina. On his part, Governor Sanwo-Olu said the road leading to the Lekki port is near completion and will ease the burden of business activities at the Apapa port when it becomes functional.
We have been visiting Lekki. Your Excellency too has been there. He has made public comments about the kick-off of Lekki Seaport. We believe Lekki should start test runs sometime in September. We're here to plead with His Excellency to increasingly give more attention to the roads leading to that port location, so that we avoid a situation where we have the same traffic gridlock that we have in Tinkan and Apapa.
I'm happy that you are in discussion with the proponents and the developers of Lekki Port. You know, ourselves are both equity owners in the place, you know, and I think they've identified who will be the port operator, but you still have a regulatory function to oversee and ensure that it conforms, you know, with the practice that the rules out the rules up that you have, you know. Yes, we're not unaware of also the road, you know, and if you ask your people, we on our own have taken up the very difficult one, which is an 18-kilometer from the Lekko Junction to Ekpe, and we've turned that road, you know, into 6-lane highway, rigid pavement. It's like what you see on Apapa Oshodi Express. It's rigid concrete pavement, you know, that we've also built, and we're completing it by the end of next month or something.
Well, the color is red again today at the local stock market. Negative sentiments continue to dominate activities as the month-to-date returns drops to 0.5%. Will Ibong has the details.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. A rather painful Tuesday as investors continue to take profit on stocks and the NGX finishing the day down 0.23%. We start with the catalyst for the sell-offs, which seems to be the flurry of earnings by corporates, as it doesn't seem to be encouraging buy activities. Zooming in on the sectors which were deeply in the red, the consumer goods index took the heat as major sell-offs can be seen in that counter. Market giant Nestle lost the most today. 40 naira sliced off its share price. Nigerian breweries, flour mills and Honeywell were not spared from the sell frenzy. The banking index reversed gains made in yesterday's session, while the industrial goods index traded further in bear territory, triggered by the 50-kobo drop in Lafarge. Nigeria Insurance flipped the table, emerging as the top gainer for today, while Cornell led 27 other decliners. The 10% drop translates to 2 naira 65 kobo off its share price, and this also weighed on the oil and gas index, which closed lower again in today's trading session. It's the second trading day of the week, and some analysts have already projected a pretty quiet session for the rest of the week. But we'll see if the market can flip the volatile coin. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Will Libang. It's back to you.
And that's business news for tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Anne, and I celebrate you today as well. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed the UK House of Commons pledging to fight Russia till the end. Nearly 2 weeks after the invasion of Ukraine began, President Zelensky welcomed sanctions on Russia but repeated an appeal for a no-fly zone over Ukraine. The leader spoke virtually from Kyiv in Ukraine and was given a standing ovation by MPs. It's the first time a foreign leader has addressed MPs in the chamber. For more on the Russian invasion of Ukraine and other international news, here's Simon Pusey with Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A ceasefire has been agreed to allow people from the cities of Sunni and Irpin to leave after a heavy night of shelling on day 13 of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Here, rescuers searching for survivors after shelling overnight in Sunni. It's unclear how many people made it out during the ceasefire period. Here, a Kharkiv resident posting footage showing the destruction on the streets of her city. And here, the mayor of Oktaya describing how the city centre has been completely destroyed. Ukrainian President Zelensky posting another video to social media comparing the war to his country's weather. The spring is similar to the war we experience, he said. Spring is harsh. We will win. The United Nations say the number of refugees who have fled Ukraine has surged past 2 million, describing it as one of the fastest exoduses in modern times. This is what they are fleeing: Desperate scenes in Irpin, people crossing a makeshift bridge in heavy snow, the scenes of war all around. The majority have come here to Poland, where more than 1 million have sought refuge. Other countries are helping too. A flight bound for Israel here taking 84 people, and here in the south of France, in the city of Perpignan, a gym has been turned into a makeshift shelter. An 11-year-old boy travelled 1,200 kilometres on his own to Slovakia, carrying no more than 2 small bags, a passport and his relative's phone number written on his hand. Hassan's mother put him on a train as she had to stay to look after her mother. But other children are less understanding. Heartbreaking scenes as this boy trudges after his mother, torn from his home by an incomprehensible war. Meanwhile, Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed British MPs via video link as his country continues to battle the invasion. It comes after Boris Johnson hosted a series of meetings in London with the leaders of Poland, Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic. The series of meetings are to discuss the UK's support for security in Central Europe. The energy company Shell has pledged to stop buying oil from Russia as it apologised for its purchase of cheap Russian crude at the weekend. They also said it would close all of its service stations in the country and stop all current work there. Shell came under huge criticism at the weekend after it purchased a cargo of Russian crude at a discounted price. Its boss said that it was wrong to buy Russian oil. The UN climate chief says she has a warning for the world that Russia's invasion of Ukraine must not distract leaders from the escalating climate crisis.
Thank you to the UK.
She said despite the war in Ukraine, global warming remains the most rapidly growing threat to human species on the planet. The UNFCCC is the 196-country treaty on tackling climate change. Tens of thousands of Sydney residents have been told to evacuate their homes as floods ravage eastern Australia. Jet skis, not cars, are now the most efficient way to get around. In the past fortnight, New South Wales and Queensland have been pummeled by heavy downpours that have caused floods and killed 20 people. The threat has now intensified in Sydney, which has been hit by widespread flash flooding.
We have 15 evacuation warnings in place affecting 20,000 people. We also know that there is a pending evacuation order coming for many people as a result of the Manly Dam beginning to spill that will affect 800 homes and 2,000 people.
And people across the world have been celebrating International Women's Day. War or no war, women need to be respected, says this soldier in Odessa in Ukraine, who bought flowers to distribute as the city prepares its defences ahead of advancing Russian forces. In Tokyo, about 100 people marched on the streets of the capital to call for gender equality. And the Chinese astronaut Wang Yaping, the first female to enter the Tiangong space station, sent her greetings to all women back on Earth. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. The English Premier League has suspended its broadcast deal with Russia following the country's invasion of neighbouring Ukraine. Or the move will take effect immediately, meaning Thursday's 4 matches will not be shown in that country. Bayern Munich have advanced to the quarter-final stage of the UEFA Champions League following a 7-1 thrashing of RB Salzburg at the Allianz Arena. A hat-trick from Robert Lewandowski, a brace from Thomas Müller and one each from Serge Gnabry and Leroy Sané saw the German club side progress to the last 8. That's on 8-2 on aggregate. In the other match of the night, Liverpool are losing to Inter, or have lost to Inter at Anfield, but they advanced to the last 8, 2-1 on aggregate. And that's a wrap in sports news.
And the main news again. The Federal High Court in Abuja today sacked the governor of Ebonyi State, Dave Umahi, his deputy and 17 lawmakers for defecting to the APC. In his reaction to the ruling, Governor Umahi said the court lacked the powers to remove him. Also today, the Senate challenged the ruling on Electoral Act amendments, barring it from re-amending the law. President of Senate maintained that the judiciary cannot stop the National Assembly. And that's News at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Nwaka. Have a good night and stay safe.